The first concentration camp built and opened by the Nazis was Dachau. It was opened on the 22nd of March 1933, and during the Second World War in its time in operation, around 188,000 prisoners passed through the barbed wire fences, and over 41,000 never made their way out as they succumbed to disease, violent treatment and execution. The guards of Dachau were known for being immensely brutal and violent, and it was used as a training school for other SS officers who would learn how to inflict a reign of terror onto prisoners. There was also floggings and whippings administered on a daily basis for those who broke the rules of the camp, and also standing cells were used to hold people inside the incredibly cramped chimneys for sometimes days on end, and they could not sit down. But executions occurred also on a daily basis, either in the nearby firing range or in the roll call yards. But inside of Dachau, 4 female spies, who had been previously brutally tortured, never made it out of Dachau, as they were executed there in horrific fashion. These women are remembered today for their espionage and also their suffering at the hands of the guards of Dachau. Join us today as we look at the torture of the female spies of Dachau, and remember to support our channel. Please make sure to subscribe. When Dachau was liberated by the American army, they found 30,000 prisoners and 10,000 of them were suffering from starvation and disease heavily. The liberators worked tirelessly day and night to sort out the conditions of the camp, and there were acts of reprisals carried out against the former guards. But many of the stories of the camp came out in the following years, and many of the prisoners told of killing and death. But there was one set of executions that were carried out that saw 4 female spies executed inside the camp's fences. On the morning of the 13th of September 1944, these 4 women were taken into a yard where they were executed by gunshot. But these women had suffered greatly following their capture, and their torture was brutal, but despite this they gave over little or no information to the Gestapo or the SS. One of these women was Noor Inayat Khan, who was part of Special Operations Executive. SOE were involved in espionage and sabotage during World War II, and they conducted reconnaissance in occupied lands, and also allied themselves with resistance groups. Codenamed Madeleine, Noor Khan was the first female wireless operator sent from the UK into occupied France to help the French resistance. On her final report it was noted that she was not overburdened with brains, but has worked hard and shown keenness. Apart from some dislike of the security side of the course, she has an unstable and temperamental personality, and it is very doubtful whether she is really suited to the work in the field. However, despite this, she flew by Lysander into France, then linked up in Paris with the leader of the resistance circuit and a network of agents. This network was known as Prosper, but from the 24th of June 1943, this network was being rounded up and captured by the Germans. Noor remained in contact with London at this time, and it was said she would be flown home, but she wanted to stay in Paris. She believed she was the only remaining radio operator in Paris, but she was later betrayed to the Germans. It's alleged her betrayer was paid 100,000 francs for her capture, and she was arrested on the 13th of October 1943 and was subsequently interrogated by the SD in Paris. During this she was tortured and tried to escape twice. Her notebook was found, but she did manage to escape the SD headquarters around 5 weeks after her capture, but she was eventually recaptured and was considered highly dangerous. She was shackled in chains most of the time, and she remained uncooperative with her captors. She refused to give over any information, but was tortured terribly, and it was said that torture of women by the SD included violent beatings, sleep deprivation, cutting and mutilating the body, pulling out fingernails and toenails, and near drowning, which was very dangerous. For 10 months Noor was shackled by her hands and feet, and she could barely move, which was torture itself. She was also suspended by her arms in the manacles, and the Nazis used this, and often joints would dislocate, and they would then burn the flesh of their victims too. The beatings and water torture made her suffer, and each evening she would cry, and the other prisoners would hear her suffering. She was seen as a lost cause, and was then eventually transferred to Dachau. Another woman who died alongside Noor Khan was Madeleine Damerment. Madeleine was a French spy who served in the SOE, and also the French resistance. She was considered a keen and hard worker with good stamina, and she was also viewed as aggressive, and she had a good knowledge of close combat. Madeleine was also a good shot, with a pistol and a rifle, but some of her superiors did not have much faith in her. She trained heavily and was then assigned to become a courier for the bricklayer resistance network. She parachuted from a Hanley Page Halifax into France, but the Gestapo were waiting for her, as they had also captured SOE wireless operatives and transmitted false messages from their radios. So Damerment was a sitting target. She was taken to the Gestapo headquarters in Paris, where she was interrogated and tortured in the same manner of Noor Inayat Khan. She was also regularly beaten and was held under horrific conditions, before she was also transferred to Dachau. Elaine Plewman was another agent who worked for SOE and the French resistance, and she served as a courier for the Monk circuit in occupied France. She trained as an agent in the field, and she was just over 5 feet tall, and she showed determination throughout her training. She learned how to kill, sabotage and detonate explosives, and was seen as a very promising agent. She parachuted into France from a Hanley Page, Halifax in August 1943 and avoided German radar. She was to be the communication link between saboteurs and intelligence gathering agents, and for a short time after being dropped, she was separated from her circuit. She made several contacts of her own whilst in hiding, and then contributed to her own circuit and managed the work between different groups. Despite challenging circumstances, she was doing very well, but in March 1944 she was captured and imprisoned. She was also beaten and tortured by the Gestapo for information and was treated terribly. Yolande Beekman was a British spy who served in the Women's Auxiliary Air Force and also Special Operations Executive. She was a member of SOE's musician circuit inside of France, where she worked as a wireless operator. She was considered trustworthy and also fearless, and she became riskier in her work each day. But at the time, the Germans began to become efficient at intercepting her radio signal with her legs. She, along with the other 3 women, were then transferred to Dachau Concentration Camp. The 4 women were taken to Dachau, and following their arrival on the 13th of September 1944, the women were then executed together. A Gestapo man named Max Vossmer was in charge of their transport to the camp, and other Gestapo officers told of the women's fate at the end of the war. These officers told of the executions of the 4 female spies of Dachau. It was said that the 4 prisoners had come from the barracks in the camp, where they had spent the night, into the yard where the shooting was to be done. Here he, Vossmer, then announced their death sentence to them. Only the lager commandant and the 2 SS men had been present. The German-speaking Englishwoman, the Major, had told her companion of this death sentence. All 4 had grown very pale and wept. The Major asked whether they could protest against the sentence. The Commandant declared that no protest could be made against this. The Major had then asked to see a priest. The camp Commandant refused this on the grounds that there was no priest in the camp. The 4 prisoners then had to kneel with their heads towards a small mound of earth, and were killed by the 2 SS, one after another, by a shot through the back of the neck. During the shooting, the 2 Englishwomen held hands, and the 2 Frenchwomen likewise. For 3 of the prisoners, the first shot caused death, but for the German-speaking Englishwoman, a second shot had to be fired, as she still showed signs of life after the first shot. After the shooting of these prisoners, the lager commandant said to the 2 SS men that he took a personal interest in the jewellery of the women, and that this should be taken into his office. There was allegations also that the female spies were set upon by SS officers, and in particular Wilhelm Ruppert, and that they were beaten within an inch of their lives before they were then shot. It's also alleged they may have been beaten to death before they were then shot from behind to confirm their death. What is certain though is that these 4 women were brutally tortured for information by the Gestapo following their capture, and they were treated terribly. All of them were regularly beaten and were subject to horrific treatment at the hands of their captives. Inside of Dachau, they met their brutal end as they were executed. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. And once again, thank you so much for watching.